Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is up? Welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on a Tuesday today here. My name is Tom Doherty, your host. As always, this podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As we're back here on Tuesday talking fantasy football in the middle of July as we are ever closer to the first week of training camp, actually, in the first week of preseason, which is in less than a month. I think we're going to see our first preseason game. I think it's August 8th, I want to say, or something around there, is the first preseason game, which is usually like the week after training camp starts, or week and a half after training camp starts, is preseason. So we roll right into it. So I named this show Sleepers, Keepers, and Weepers because they're me weeping because I don't like them, and I also wanted it to rhyme. So there you go. Wondering why it says Weepers up on your title board there, but yeah, Sleepers, Keepers, and Weepers. Weepers are the guys who are going to be weeping because I don't like them fantasy wise, but the guys they're sleepers, like Geronimo Allison, who might not be the biggest sleeper because he's the receiver for the Packers, and he's also going to be a big target for Aaron Rodgers, but he's a guy who we'll be talking about throughout this first segment, along with some other guys that I will be picking out as sleepers for this season. I think we've already talked about a couple of them that I talked about last week, especially one of them on the Niners. And then also some keepers, as far as like keepers, meaning like, yeah, for keeper leagues, like I'm in a keeper league this year looking at keeping Todd Gurley because he was my third round pick last year, which means that he would be locked in for my third round pick this year, which is a pretty good steal, taking a guy who will likely go in the first round for most leagues in the third round, and having to be able to have the freedom of knowing that you already have a top tier running back on your team. You could draft accordingly. There, I'll probably take two receivers, honestly, or maybe a Jerick McKinnon, who's not a sleeper really anymore because he's been a very good fantasy player in the past with the Vikings, and now going to be even better in my mind because he's going to have the bulk of the carries. He's not going to have a Latavius Murray or a Adrian Peterson in front of him, so you got to figure that out. That'll figure itself out there in San Francisco. But as far as it goes to sleepers, I have a few that I do want to go over as far as coming this year and the way it's going to work with their team. So first one, Geronimo. It's going to be a lot of receivers, honestly. There's so many receivers out there, and we forget about some of them. Even though receivers are tough because they could get open, but the quarterback, it's a two-part thing. The quarterback has to see him open and throw him the ball. And obviously, if they get in the end zone, it's almost an added bonus if your receiver gets a touchdown. Because, I mean, they can get points through yards rather efficiently, and especially if it's PPR as well. So they could do it through that way as well. So looking at it from a perspective of sleeper looking at guys who I think are just going to pop this year who haven't really popped yet, that's what we're going to go from this point. That's why I'm saying Geronimo Allison, because he is going to take, I think Jordy Nelson's been there. So is they had Devontae Adams and Jordy Nelson together there. Now it's going to be Devontae Adams and Geronimo Allison. He's going to be that kind of the number two guy now, along with Jimmy Graham. There's no sleeper there with Jimmy Graham. He's not sleeping. Nobody's sleeping on him, but I think Geronimo Allison is going to be a huge player for fantasy this year, especially for Randall Cobb. He's obviously getting a little up there in the age-wise, and he has some injury issues usually throughout the year. So think about Geronimo Allison especially. Another guy is, I think I've talked about him a lot as well, is Jordan Matthews on the Patriots now. As he comes over from the Bills, he was traded from the Eagles to the Bills, and now is on the Patriots. So anybody with Tom Brady is going to be good. I think you're going to be just fine with him. But I think you're going to be. This is a guy who's 6'3", 212, was a second-round pick out of Vanderbilt, played with the Eagles, has done well, then played with the Bills after that trade. I'm going to see who he got traded for. But, you're looking at the fact that he's going to be with the Patriots now. He got traded for, Ronald Darby, like cornerback, which isn't fine. Cornerbacks are a premium position. But, looking at him with Brady this year, I think the fact that Edelman's going to be gone for much of the first part of the season, obviously those 4 games he's suspended for, is going to be a big deal. And you could see Matthews get into that offense and get integrated really quickly. And obviously when you have Brady throwing him the ball, it's you just got to catch it. That's all you got to do is catch it. He'll find you. And Tom Brady's never had any problems with spreading the ball around, and he'll find the open guy, and whoever it is will get the touches. So Jordan Matthews, which we've seen him be able to do, he has the elusiveness to get open, especially with a quarterback like Brady. That's as easy as it gets for a sleeper for me, honestly, down there. Definitely with Jordan Matthews, gotta like him, and he's fallen. He's not really that high up on the board. It's weird. He's not that high up on any receiver fantasy boards. Maybe we'll slide up a little more during training camp if we learn more about it. But it was kind of a deal that went under the radar, and not many people kind of figured it out. All right, another sleeper for this year, because he had an excellent end of the season last year, and I think he's going to be a great weapon for Jimmy Garoppolo, and that is Marquise Goodwin. Maybe not the biggest sleeper because people know who he is. He's a guy who went to the Olympics in 2012 I think he's a long jumper. Represented the United States in the Olympics in London, and then played with the Bills. Actually had a nice little time with the Bills. Not the flashiest, but not the great. I mean, he was flashy with his speed, but not flashiest with putting up the numbers. And then he has a great end of the year last year, especially after the tragedy that him and his wife had to go through after losing their unborn son before that. And then he gets a touchdown in that game. It was a pretty cool sight to see, especially for me being a Niner fan, seeing that. But I'm not picking him because he's a Niner. I'm picking him because I love the fact that I love the chemistry I've already seen with him and Jimmy Garoppolo. And everybody's like, oh, Jimmy's overrated. Oh, we don't know what Jimmy's going to do. He's only been 5 games. Well, Jimmy's going to have another you saw what he did coming in cold, basically, with that receiving core. Now he's going to have all offseason, all training camp, to get them on the same page, and they're going to add a Pierre Garçon, who I wouldn't even put as a sleeper because he's actually had some very good fantasy years. But along with Trent Taylor, you could probably put Trent Taylor lumped up with Marquise Goodwin as like the 2 sleeper guys for the Niners, as more slot receivers for the Niners, because look what Taylor Gabriel did for this. I mean, every time I want to compare the Niners, you look at their coach. It's Kyle Shanahan. Who was Kyle Shanahan coach for? The Atlanta Falcons. Who do the Atlanta Falcons have? Taylor Gabriel. Who else do they have? Mohamed Sanu. They had other guys in the middle there. I'm trying to think. They had one more guy who I'm totally blanking on. I think it was Taylor Gabriel was the big guy. He's not even there anymore. But then they have Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Look who they got in the backfield there now. I'll get to him eventually. Matt Breida being a sleeper this year. I think Matt Breida is going to have an excellent fantasy year. The only thing that might hinder him is the fact that Jerry McKinnon might have a better year and might get more touches. So that might just go hand in hand with that. So, I mean, you know how there's only one ball. You got to spread it around a little bit. So that's my sleeper. I'll lump Marquise and Trent Taylor together because they're both very underrated but very talented, especially in that system. I think they're going to go do well. There's a reason why they're still on the team. And the Niners weren't too aggressive with having to go get Allen Robinson or having to go get a Austin Hearns. They actually even drafted an Allen Hearns. They actually drafted a receiver in Dante Pettis, who I think is going to be an excellent addition to that core as well, because he's another speed guy, going to work with Marquise, going to work with in fact, they have Pierre Garçon there, a veteran who is an excellent route runner, is going to help all those receivers, and add even further into the fact that Marquise and Trent Taylor are my sleepers and are, I don't know about if they're too draftable. I think Marquise is definitely draftable. Not about Trent Taylor, but I would wait till probably week 2 and see if Trent Taylor actually has integrated himself into that offense again well, because he was a clutch go-to third down receiver for Jimmy Garoppolo in those games last year. And I know we talked about those games a lot last year with the fact that they were not against slouchy teams. They were against good teams. And so don't sleep on those guys at all when it comes to fantasy, because they're going to be very, very good. All right, next up is actually going to be a rookie, and I think he is going to fight his way through the traffic of Tampa Bay and turn himself into a very good fantasy player, and that's Ronald Jones III down there, or Ronald Jones Jr. down there at in Tampa, because they don't really have Doug Martin's gone. I think they had Charles Sims down there. He'll probably get the leading job, and I could pick him as a sleeper, but I know he's a rookie. It's kind of a tough tilly, like, oh, he's a rookie, hasn't even shown us what he can do, so that's an easy pick. But yeah, no, he's going to have the touches, he's going to get the volume, and he's also been able to show me the skills, and he's been at USC, and he's been in a pro style offense, he's been in the Pac-12 where you have massive linemen and not quite the same speed, obviously there's no speed like the NFL, but playing in a big conference like that, you do get to match up against some of the bigger guys that are going to be also playing in the NFL as well. So when they played Washington, he played Vita Vea, who's going to be up in DC for the Redskins in the middle of their defense. He played Solomon Thomas for Stanford Cardinal. He's on the Niners. He played DeForest. I don't know if he played DeForest Buckner. The ears are a little off there, so I'm trying to get to these guys who the Pac-12 is not slouch when it comes to big NFL talent. So Ronald Jones, don't sleep on him. I know there's guys there's bigger running backs. Obviously, everybody loves Saquon. I love Sony Michel on the Patriots. I wouldn't call that really a sleeper because he's on the Patriots. And Patriots running backs are hard to kind of figure out anyways because they really spread the ball around. James White's still there. I think Deion Lewis, him going is a big help. The fact that it's going to make it easier to figure out that Sony Michel is going to get some touches. But, looking at the rookies in general, I mean, the biggest sleeper I think of the rookie class that nobody really keyed on that much is Ronald Jones. And I think out of all of them, looking at how crowded some of the backfields are on the league, like look at the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions got Kerryon Johnson, who's a very, very good running back, but they also have Amir Abdullah. They also have Theo Riddick. They also have LeGarrette Blount, and one of those guys are going to go. I think it's going to be either Riddick or Abdullah. Blount was just signed there, and they just drafted Johnson, so I think they're obviously both safe. I think it's going to be Abdullah that might get the axe. Honestly, it's 50-50 for me. That's going to probably go down to training camp, but they can't run with 4 running backs would be a lot, and either of those guys, whether it's Abdullah or Riddick, can probably find another team, no problem. But as far as it goes, where running backs are thin, looking at just volume and math and amount of times he's going to get the ball, especially with Jameis Winston gone for the first 3 games, I think it's going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick. Is he still the backup for the Buccaneers? Ronald Jones is going to get his chance to go. Whether he's going to succeed, I'm not going to count. I hope so. Obviously, he's my pick. But as far as it goes with these rookie running backs, obviously that class was crazy good last year. Saquon Barkley is not a sleeper. He's not. Kerryon Johnson is in a crowded backfield. Royce Freeman, they're still trying to figure. Obviously, that whole offense in Denver is an overhauled new quarterback. It's tough to decide there. And obviously, they still have Devontae Booker. Nick Chubb is in a crowded backfield in Cleveland. So you have a bunch of different guys who have some question marks around them, and the guy who's doesn't have a question mark because he's the most highly touted running back in the league, or a rookie running back in the league in Saquon. But I like Ronald Jones. I've always liked Ronald Jones. I watched him a lot. Being out here in California, watched a lot of USC football. He is a beast, and I like him a lot. So looking at that, that's why I picked him as a guy that not many people might be talking about, because Nick Chubb gets a lot of the pub. Even Kerryon Johnson, obviously Saquon gets the pub. Sony Michel because he played for Georgia last year in the final. But no, don't forget about old Ronald Jones. Big, great NFL body. He's got the size already. He kind of reminds me, honestly, not quite the size of a Leonard Fournette, but almost there, because they both played on tough runners, tough runners. And he's also got some good speed to get away, too. So I'll take Ronald Jones there, and we'll cut off this segment. I'm going to come back, and we'll do a half-and-half segment next, before we'll do some more sleepers, and then I'll start with the keepers, and then we'll roll that into the third segment before we get to our weepers in the final segment of the day. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on a Tuesday today here, as we are talking sleepers, keepers, and weepers on the show today. I left off with some sleepers in the first half, or first part of the show in the first segment. We're going to talk about some more, and then get into some keepers throughout this the back end of this segment and the next one. The next guy I'm talking about might not be the biggest sleeper, because he is going to be the number one running back on his team. I'm pretty sure now. I actually had him last year when he was still splitting carries with Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard. Now it'll just be Giovanni Bernard there with Joe Mixon in the backfield for the Cincinnati Bengals. I know Mixon had a bunch of stuff surrounding him throughout the draft and going through the draft and such. Bengals take him. He actually has a nice little rookie season. I actually liked how he did. He was really good in the short yardage by the on the goal line situations that gave him the ball. So now he's going to be the only guy, and then obviously with Giovanni Bernard being a different kind of running back, this is a guy. Do not sleep on him. If you need a help in the running game, and if you need help in the running game in the draft, the back end of the draft, you're looking for a second running back, because he's going to get touches. The Bengals, their offense isn't a complete slouch. He's going to get touches. So even in the middle of the draft, if you're looking for a second running back that you don't want to, if you're maybe you forgot about it or something like that, or you got a bunch of receivers and now you're in the middle of the draft and there's only a handful of running backs left, look at Joe Mixon hard, because Joe Mixon's going to be good. He already was good last year. He's going to have even more touches this year because there's no more Jeremy Hill there in Cincinnati. That offense, I think, is going to get more ground and pound. I think they're going to really run the ball a lot this year, taking some of the load off of Andy Dalton, especially. So definitely take Joe Mixon into account. Like I said, great runner. Great in between the tackles, also has a separation speed. We saw what he did in college, and then he's also pretty good on the short yardage game as well. So at the goal line, they're not afraid of giving him the ball there either. So definitely a guy to take into account for sure. Another guy, maybe not the biggest sleeper, but definitely a guy that we don't talk about as much as Kenyan Drake. He's down in Miami now. He'll be the number one guy down in Miami. He has kind of worked his way through his NFL career, but then also is now becoming a guy where we're going to talk about him, and he's going to be a guy I think is going to be talked about a lot on highlight shows, on fantasy shows throughout the season, on the recap shows, whatever. Is also a guy you have to key on. And for the Dolphins, obviously they're trying to get Ryan Tannehill back healthy, but if they really want to be balanced, they're going to have to really force the run and not get one-dimensional, and make sure that Kenyan Drake is going to be. I think he's going to be just fine. He's going to be Kenyan Drake. He's got the speed. He's got the power to do it. And you've seen him. He's also got the size. He's 6'1", 211. He get that pad level down low, and he's a hard guy to bring down. Really hard guy to bring down. And we saw what he did last year. in his, it was probably just his second season in the league. Yeah, it was last year, as he was traded from the. Actually, was traded to the. He's been around actually a little bit. I think he was drafted by the Eagles, or J.J. was drafted to the Eagles, but was traded to the Eagles, and that made Kenyan Drake. So Kenyan Drake's on one team. I'm mixing myself up here. No, they got trade J.J. to the Eagles. You think that they're going to have some trust in this guy? So you definitely have to take that into account. Looking at his year last year, rushing wise, played in all 16 games. Played in all the games last year, all 16 games in 2017. 3 touchdowns, had 32 receptions as well. So not bad at all. Averaged 4.8 yards a carry. Can't knock that. As he's a guy who is going to be kind of the same thing as like a Lamar Miller when he was in Miami. I think is going to be a guy who's going to get a lot of touches, because Miami, they need to be able to be balanced. They can't get one dimensional. They're in a division with some interesting defenses, and then they also have a schedule this year that probably is favorable for the run. So I like Kenyan Drake. Always have loved Kenyan Drake. Love his size. Also love the speed that you get with his size as well. So he's definitely got some separation speed and also some power. Those big legs to get through the tackles. All right, next guy. As we're almost to the point where I'm going to switch over to the keepers, where that's pretty much the guys you've heard of for a while. We'll talk about them some more. But another guy who we kind of just let go when we're talking about the rookie running backs is Rashard Penny. And Rashard Penny is in Seattle, and he's kind of in the same situation as Ronald Jones Jr., where you're on a team that, Tampa Bay was expected to be good last year. They were not. Seattle has been expected to be good for the last few years, and they kind of took a backward step this year. They're going to probably take another one, I think, this coming season. But a guy who I think is going to come out of this on a good note is Rashard Penny. And the fact that he's going to get a lot of touches, going to get a lot of carries in his rookie year. He had a excellent career down at San Diego State. Might be a little bit of change of speed for him, so might get caught up in the speed of the NFL, transitioning from the San Diego State game. But this guy is a flyer. He is fast. He is powerful. He's got all the skills. This is a good. John Snyder is not a dope. He's a very good GM, and he picked this guy in the first round for a reason. It was kind of confusing to some, but I'm actually not surprised, because he was the guy down at San Diego State, so he knows how to deal with pressure. He's not going to have very many people around him when it comes to weapons. I think if Robert Turbin re-signed with them, or whoever their other running back is there at in Seattle, he's going to be their guy. He's going to be the number one guy. Marshawn Lynch is gone, and they don't really have. They have Russell Wilson and him in that backfield, and I think they're going to actually end up being a pretty good tandem. I don't know how Wilson's going to do this year. I'm not really that high on Wilson when it comes to fantasy. You won't hear his name very much more in this show, but Rashard Penny is definitely a guy to take attention of, because he's a flyer. He's a flyer, and he's a breaker. He can do good. Knowing Russell Wilson and his ability to move around in the pocket, catching out of the backfield for Rashard Penny is going to be a big, big deal for him. I know it's tough to take. Don't want to, like I said, you forget about all these rookie running backs who got taken. He actually was one of the first ones to be taken, if not the first one to be taken, actually. I think he may have been the first one to be taken, actually. I'm trying to, other than Saquon, obviously, but his first one to be taken later in that first round, and then it was Sony Michel, and then Nick Chubb goes as well. Rashard Penny, obviously very high up on the board there for the Seahawks. They're probably going to feature him a lot in their offense, knowing them, and whether they don't have very good pass blocking. I think their offensive line is more geared towards run blocking, but also getting a situation where Russell Wilson's going to get it to him out of the backfield as well. A lot of checkdowns. He's going to get probably a PPR machine, honestly, knowing that offense, and the fact that I think Russell Wilson's going to have to take a lot of checkdowns this year. And he does that anyways. He's a very safe quarterback. He's very good at finding his checkdown. So that's all going to be points right there for Rashard Penny. Honestly, I might draft him. I might draft him as my flexes, or as put him on my bench somewhere, because I feel like he's going to be a guy, like I said, through PPR. Through those checkdowns, he's going to get a lot of catches. I wouldn't be surprised if he averages like 7, 8, 9 catches a game for the Seattle Seahawks, and that's points. That's straight points right there for a rookie running back, and you can't go wrong with that. All right, let's switch over to the keepers. We're going to do this for the rest of the segment, and then the next one as well. As far as guys, I mean, I can do it as keeper leagues, basically. If you have this player and you are in a keeper league, you should keep him, basically. There's some obvious guys, basically the whole first round, like I talked about with just Todd Gurley. Like if you have a value pick in the third round, like I did with Todd Gurley last year, won my league for me, but I got him in the third round, and you're going to do a keeper league, then you keep him for that third round pick. So then you can go, okay, I still have the 5th pick in the first round. I'll take DeAndre Hopkins because I don't need to stretch and go get a Kamara or go get a Saquon Barkley, assuming they're still available, or somebody else, or a Kareem Hunt if say Ezekiel Elliott's gone or the top guys are already gone. I don't have to do that because I already have Todd Gurley. But then say I get the first pick overall, or something like that, or a pick where you have to pick basically DeAndre Hopkins, and I mean you can probably find a receiver, but say there's a receiver who you don't want to pick in the first round, then now you have your first 2 running backs, boom, boom, and you can pick a receiver in the second round. For me, honestly, it's probably going to go like this. Hopefully none of my teammates listen to me, but for example, Todd Gurley right there. Third round, okay. First round's going to be DeAndre Hopkins. Second round's Jerick McKinnon. Done. Then now I have my 2 running backs and my receiver in the first 3 rounds. Thank you. I'll figure it out the rest of the way. There you go. I mean, another guy, obviously Kamara is another guy you think about, but anybody you pretty much drafted in that third round and below that is going to be anybody that you think, okay, here's my rule of thumb when it comes to keepers, is that if you drafted them in a round, and they are projected to go in a round earlier than that, that's who you keep. So say me, I drafted, you say you drafted Kamara last year in the 5th round, which a lot of people did because nobody really knew who he was. And he's obviously going to be a first, second round pick this year. You keep him because he's the most valuable, and you're going to get the most value out of your 5th round pick this year because he isn't a 5th round pick. He's a first round pick, but you're going to get him at the 5th round because of the keeper league. Same thing for like, I'm trying to think of people that really pop out of the boards. Same thing for like a Kareem Hunt. If you grabbed Kareem Hunt like later, if he slid down the draft a little bit more. Same thing for like a DeAndre Hopkins. Same thing for Michael Thomas. Honestly, Michael Thomas, not many people didn't. He was only a 2nd-year player last year, and I think that he's going to be a guy who is a second round, late first round, early second round receiver. And some people who picked him in the 4th, 5th round, that's who you keep. It's pretty simple. Michael Thomas is a great example of that. Exactly. Same thing with Mark Ingram, except him. Different story. Mark Ingram's going to miss your first 4 games, so he's not going to get picked. Obviously, no, he won't be picked in the draft. But looking at it, Ezekiel Elliott is probably one of the biggest wild cards. He was actually the biggest wild card last year because he was kind of a persona non grata, even though he did play to start the season off and then didn't play and cost the guy who picked him last year his season because of it. He was in first place all year long, and then Zeke goes on his suspension and all hell breaks loose, and I win the league, which is great. So thank you, Zeke, for waiting to take your suspension for when you did. But looking at it as and it's from a point where you probably took Saquon at like 4th round just for safe, or you stole him in the 6th round. There you go. Let me not Saquon, sorry, Ezekiel Elliott. That's easy pickings. Easy pickings right there because you already have him locked up. He's your 6th round pick. It's done. It's already been decided. Put the sticker on the board. Make a call. Like, it's already picked. So, I mean, it's pretty interesting. I know keeper leagues are tough. So, I mean, sometimes, when you have a 12-man keeper league, that's 12 players. Basically, the whole first round is gone. So you're going to figure out who's going to go. Like, I would assume that I'm just trying to think off the top of my head here, like an Antonio Brown, but he was picked first. So, I mean, if you pick somebody, if you want to keep your guy you picked in the first round, sure, it better be Antonio Brown. It better be Le'Veon Bell. It better be a DeAndre Hopkins. Because if you picked last year David Johnson in the first, well, actually, that's not a bad pick either. So, I mean, David Johnson. Okay, here we go. If you picked Odell Beckham last year in the first round and you keep him, people, hello. There's something you don't do. Here's the don't do at the end of this. At the end of the segment, before we go into the next one, don't do that. You picked Odell Beckham in the first round last year. Pick a different player. Pick a different player. I'm telling you, do not keep anybody that you picked in the first 2 rounds. Maybe I'll give you the second round. Like if you got Alvin Kamara in the second round, or you got Kareem Hunt in the second round, somebody like a running back in the second round, fine. If you got DeAndre Hopkins in the second round, like I did, fine. I mean, just do that. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, actually got in the second round last year, which is crazy. I think I went Aaron Rodgers, DeAndre Hopkins, and then obviously Todd Gurley, which is hilarious. But I'm keeping Todd Gurley because I can figure out my running back situation and receiver situation in the first 2 rounds, no problem. Again, anyways, probably take DeAndre Hopkins. But that's a guy that's somebody who I would not keep if I picked him in the first round. That's definitely somebody who I would not pick in the first round. I mean, even because you still can get him, even if you get even a guy like Ezekiel Elliott. Don't keep him in the first round. You can still get him again. Why would you pick him again? There's too much talent in that first round. So say you get the 5th pick. Obviously, you're leaving it to chance a little bit when it comes to because you obviously. I mean, you should have to lock in who your pick is, who your keeper pick is before you select draft positions. FYI, because that would change my pick at all completely. If say, for example, if you pick draft positions first and then you get the 4th pick in the draft, it's a very easy decision not to keep Ezekiel Elliott because he's probably going to still be there when you pick 4th. I mean, unless maybe then if he's not, then that's the problem, because then if he's not, he gets taken 3rd. Zeke gets taken 3rd, and you're stuck with you can't take Todd Gurley because I have him locked up. You can't take David Johnson because he got some locked up. So then people start sliding up the board. So you got to be careful a little bit. I would definitely pick who you are going to keep and lock that in before you decide on positions to draft. So we'll come back and talk about some more players, maybe not keepers per se, but just guys who I think are going to go off this year. And you probably think that too because they're pretty well-known household names. So we'll do that when we come back. Stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast here on a Thursday today. I kind of ran out of players, so we might have to do this all in one segment today here. Yeah. Looking through my notes here, I'm like, I was going too fast. I was too excited the last segment because I'm like, I'm running out of players. All right, we'll do this all in one segment. I'll give you some more keepers and then also the weepers here in this third segment, we're going to call it here. Today, but we'll come back on Thursday. I'm going to do some mock drafts for you, so we'll do it longer. I wanted to save those for Thursday because that was all encompassed into my show planning today. I was a little too fast to get through those first 2 segments. I'm like, oh wow, I ran out of things. All right, so the more guys I want to talk about when it comes to sleepers, we talked about keepers. Here we go. More on the keepers as far as like guys, like I said, there's a way to do this where it comes to value. So look at your drafts from last year, look where you picked somebody and decide. So I mean, say like Devontae Adams, he's a top receiver this year actually. So obviously like I said, first round selections, you don't want to handcuff yourself on a first round pick. I'm sorry, unless Le'Veon Bell, you don't want to risk not getting Le'Veon again this year. Sure, lock up Le'Veon, call him your first round pick. Basically, you got the first pick. The thing is, honestly, so that is actually the one thing I just was thinking about. Like, wait, there is one little loophole to my rule that I was talking about before, where you say don't lock up first round guys. The only one would be is if you have Le'Veon and you pick him, and you picked him first last year. But does that automatically mean you pick first? I don't think so. You still have draft selections, so you still have your spot, your order. So say you picked Le'Veon first last year, you lock him up, but then you draft your order, you pick your order, and you're the 10th pick in an 12-man team. Well, now you have the 10th pick and Le'Veon. Well, now you have the you'd have the. Well, the 10th, you wouldn't have the 10th pick because Le'Veon technically would be the 10th pick of the draft, and then you'd have early second round pick to take. So that's fine. Obviously, so that's why you would lock in Le'Veon. As far as me, I picked a quarterback last year, first round, like an idiot. Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it didn't really matter, but I'm obviously not going to be locking him up. So I mean, maybe an AB. Maybe a Le'Veon Bell. Zeke, I'd probably figure it out my own way. I'd try and figure out who else everybody else locked up, and seeing if there's some other guys still available. Because let's say a guy did lock up Le'Veon Bell, but then he also gets the second pick in the draft. Okay, the first guy can't pick Le'Veon. The second guy is going to pick Le'Veon, and now you have some other more room to work with. So keeper leagues are really interesting, and they have a lot to kind of fold into them as well. When it comes to weepers, though, this year, I didn't come up. I was like, thinking of a word that rhymes with sleepers and keepers. Ended up being weepers. So people that would be weeping because they don't get the praise that I would like to give them this year are going to be as follows. Emmanuel Sanders, sorry, buddy, you are kind of on your last leg. I'm not really a fan. I mean, he is just projection is great. 9 points, 10 points every single day. But that's about it. It's either nothing or like that. It doesn't really go much over. And he's got Demaryius Thomas there. I don't know how much they're going to be throwing the ball around Denver with Case Keenum. But Emmanuel Sanders has kind of lost it for me as far as it goes when fantasy. I'm not picking him again. I've had him on my team like seemingly the last 3 or 4 years, and it hasn't really done me any good. In the future, Dez Bryant, he's not on a team, so he's automatic weeper. It's been 88 days. I saw something yesterday. It was a picture of Dez in his 88 jersey. He's like 88 days since Dez was released by the Cowboys. Has yet to find a team. Shocker. So there you go. Actually, a guy that I forgot. I'm going to go way back to the sleepers. I forgot Brandon Marshall signed with the Seahawks. This could be either a sleeper or a weeper, because he could either go off in Seattle and figure out that he was all of a sudden this great player, and Russell Wilson can turn him into this great player, or it'll end up being a failed experiment there, and to figure out, or he'll end up retiring. So that's what I'm going to say about that one when it comes to sleepers and weepers as far as it goes. Another one is Doug Martin. He's got to deal with I think he's on the Raiders now. I think he's still good. He had to deal with suspension last year, never really bounced back from it all. I think he's on the Raiders now, and their running game is kind of weird. I know they still have Jalen Richard, or whatever his name is, who actually I like, and obviously beast mode over there. But Doug Martin, I don't think he's going to get that many touches this year. I think he's going to be a guy that kind of gets lost in the sidelines and might end up might not be on that team by the end of the year. I mean, he's 29 years old. I mean, that's kind of the back end of a career for a running back. No offense, but I mean, he's always kind of been undersized, and has had some issues with PEDs as well. So he's definitely a weeper as far as it goes for this season. I really wish I could say that Odell Beckham Jr. is a weeper, but he's too talented. He's too talented to do it. He's got the ability. He's fast. He's got the hands ability to do it. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but he's coming back from the injury. I think he's going to be fine, but I wouldn't classify him as a weeper quite yet. We'll see how it goes, but I think he's really, I mean, him and Sterling Shepard, and if anything, Sterling Shepard might be the weeper because he's going to be losing out some touches. So there you go. Sterling Shepard, weeper, because he's going to be weeping over the fact that he is going to be out a bunch of balls this year, because either they're going to be going to Odell or Saquon pretty much, or Evan Ingram, assuming he gets a good matchup, because that's actually a guy Evan Ingram, who isn't really a sleeper because he's high rated right now on the fantasy boards, the rankings for tight end, but he's a guy who is going to be a absolute death mismatch for a linebacker because he's extremely fast and agile from that tight end position there for the Giants. The whole Giants team is going to be very, very interesting to watch this year. You got an old man quarterback who got benched last year. You got one of the most exciting players to come out of the draft in running back, and you have Odell Beckham, and we know everything that follows him. He's coming back from injury, blah, blah, blah. He's got to go give a marriage proposal to the kicking net, make sure they live happy ever after. But, that's my thing on Odell Beckham. Never really been the biggest fan of him as it goes, but, we'll figure it out. All right, another weeper. This doesn't really have anything to do with fantasy. I just wanted to say it because I think he's going to be out of a job pretty soon, or at least a backup. That's going to be Sam Bradford. But you got to give Sam Bradford a real good golf clap. This is a GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast golf clap for Sam Bradford for swindling over $150 million of salary from the Rams. He actually did okay for the Vikings, and now he's on the Cardinals. And if there is a quarterback, I think that if there's any quarterback who's going to be, as a rookie, is to play the fastest, I think if I had to put my money on it, who's going to play the fastest, it's going to be Josh Rosen. Unless, barring any craziness that makes Josh Allen start game week 1. I don't think any of them are going to start week 1. None of them are, because Tyrod Taylor is playing too well in Cleveland. I thought that maybe they would start Baker week 1 because of the fact that he's the first-round pick. Or first pick overall, but apparently Tyrod Taylor is having a great mini camp, had great OTAs. I really high on him going through this getting through the beginning of training camp as well. So you got to like the fact that they are working Tyrod and really putting more of their eggs in his basket versus putting them all in the rookie basket over there with Baker Mayfield. But we'll figure out how we'll all see how it goes, and we'll be here to talk about it. But I feel like if there was really a guy to get on the field first, you have to give out, okay, who's the Josh Allen, maybe, because A.J. McCarron isn't that good. But Josh Allen has a little more refining to do. That's the problem. And then you have Josh Rosen, who is the most refined quarterback, has a little bit, but the size, body size, he can do that as he plays. That's the thing. He can play, but then also grow and get better and get more meat on the bones, muscle mass. But he also plays behind a injury-prone quarterback in Sam Bradford down there in Arizona. So Sam Bradford, if he makes it, I think I talked about it with Jesse a month ago or so on the football show that I did with him. Is like, do you think Sam Bradford makes it through 10 weeks of the NFL? I think I put it right at 10 weeks. Right at 10 weeks is the over-under for Sam Bradford to see how long he makes it. If he doesn't have to get injured, I don't think. He doesn't even have to get injured. I think that you got a new coaching staff, you got a defensive-minded coach actually now in Arizona. I think the biggest law. Maybe Bruce. They better. I think Bruce Arians left on good terms with the Cardinals. Hopefully, he stays in Phoenix for the sake of Josh Rosen, because Bruce Arians was the quarterback coach for Peyton Manning, and he also was the quarterback coach for an offensive coordinator for Ben Roethlisberger, and he's won Super Bowls. So with those two big quarterbacks, so getting him with another tall quarterback, that's why I was kind of like, ooh, they picked Rosen, but then they lose Bruce Arians as the head coach. He retires. Maybe he'll come back as like a special assistant, maybe even during the offseason to work with Josh Rosen, because if anybody would be a help for Josh Rosen, it would be Bruce Arians for sure. He probably some of his coaching staff, I'm sure, is still there. Steve Keim is the GM of the Arizona Cardinals. I'm sure he had a contingency plan in place because they knew they wanted to get a quarterback, obviously, and losing one of the best quarterback whisperers in the league is not something you want to do when you're trying to develop a young quarterback. So I'm sure he figured out a way to get Bruce Arians back on in some sort of capacity to work with Josh Rosen, because Josh Rosen put some pounds on him. He'd be a very good, very, very good quarterback in the NFL for a long time. And yeah, he was a diva. We talked about him a lot. I've talked about him a lot on the college football show. And but he can walk the walk. You saw what he did against Texas A&M. He might not have had the best college career, but college is weird. College, you're playing with other college players and guys who might not even make it to the NFL at all, who might have a chance. He's going to be playing with very good players. The Arizona Cardinals have a decent roster. They have a good offensive roster. They have a Hall of Fame receiver. They have some other guys in there. They obviously have a good defense with Chandler Jones, the sack leader, and one of the best corners in the league in Patrick Peterson. So he'll have a chance. He'll definitely have a chance, and I think that he's going to be a guy that Sam Bradford will be a guy who's weeping. I know I just went on my rant about Josh Rosen in the fantasy football show, but you know what? Josh Rosen could be a guy you can pick off waivers. You never know. What if he turns into be a really productive fantasy quarterback? I mean, there's 31 others to pick up. Oh, actually, over 31 others to pick from because, I mean, I don't think Joe Flacco is going to get picked. But then again, that's another idea. What if Joe Flacco is the biggest weeper of the year because he gets benched for Lamar Jackson sooner rather than later, which is honestly a possibility as well because they love Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, and they love the scene he can do at that quarterback position. All right, that'll wrap it up for this segment and for the show today. As I did kind of go a little fast, and we went through all my players pretty quickly here in my notes. So we'll come back on Thursday and do some mock drafts for you, as well as some more talk on fantasy football players and guys to stay away from and guys that you should take a chance on as well. So everybody have a good middle of your week. Happy Tuesday. We'll be back on Thursday, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.